Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So, at this point, I'd like everyone to stand up. So the Startup Grind tradition. And what I'd like to introduce is Lokesh Sikaria with Moneta Ventures. I've been practicing. And really, what I want to do is just give him a big round of applause so that he really has a rock. So I'll start out gentle, and usually it's just more background. So where are you originally from, Lokesh?
So I grew up in India and was there in India till my 12th grade. Came here to do my undergraduate at Berkeley, so go Bears. After Berkeley, basically joined Pricewaterhouse here in San Francisco.
And go ahead yourself. And so what did your parents do?
So my father was in business. He was a entrepreneur who had at any given time 5 to 6 companies going with $200,000 to $5 million in revenue, I grew up seeing him in business all the time.
So you were kind of doing the family thing.
Yes, and and I would like to add there, which is it's interesting seeing them grow in business. When I started with Pricewaterhouse and I eventually transitioned to what I would call business, had a percentage profit. I went from a $200,000 a year job to $60,000 in profit sharing. Most parents and most families would be worried about, what are you doing? In my case, I got a call from my grandfather and said, finally you are in business, right? So I was, delighted that I took that risk and, decided to do that.
Oh, your father's here, right?
And my father is here today, so.
All right, welcome. So what was it? You mentioned Pricewater after college, but what was your first job? Did you?
That was my first job. I got recruited out of college by Pricewaterhouse.
So you didn't do like a new lemonade stand or anything like that?
Well, I did for 6 months. I went back to India and did an internship with my dad's firm.
Okay.
Because originally that was the intent, is I would take over the business, and then things kind of worked differently a little bit. So did not end up joining him. But that was my first job, I guess. Yeah.
And is this so as a child? What did you want to do when you grew up?
So I wanted to be a businessman, and because my dad was kind of a role model and he had a engineering degree, so from an education standpoint I felt like I should get an engineering degree too. I was not very good with mechanical things, so I said, well, I gotta find something where I don't have to do any mechanical drawing at that time. I could never figure out those 3-dimensional pictures. So I said, well, I gotta be in electrical engineering, but because that doesn't require that 3-dimensional spatial ability. So that's how I ended up in my education.
So did you? You had an engineering degree, and so did you sort of learn business on the side, or?
Yeah, I actually did all the requirements for a minor in business while I was doing engineering.
All right. So I'll just fast forward because you were at Pricewaterhouse, and then your first, I think your first big company was Rapidime.
Yes.
And you were the CEO at Rapidime. What did Rapidime do?
So Rapidime was a IT services company. When I joined, it was primarily staffing resources. Was about 25 to 30 million in revenue. And the person who brought me in, Paul Fernberg, who later was my partner at Sparta, basically wanted me to build an SAP business and also take Rapidime into projects, right? So they knew, staffing could grow so far, but at some point they needed to be able to do projects.
So you kind of did a pivot then.
Yes. So as a company, we started doing projects after I joined, and we continued having some staffing business all through. But by the time we exited, actually, Rapidime was 75 to 80% project work.
Okay. And then what was the? I think was it Fujitsu that bought Rapidime?
Yes. So Rapidime grew from that 20 to 30 million in revenue to 300 million in revenue. We employed 2,000 people here in the
Wow.
U.S. And and the division I used to head up, SAP, did really well. So I got the chance to run the company. And when we sold to Fujitsu, at that time, Fujitsu really didn't have a U.S. presence from a services standpoint.
Okay.
So what is Fujitsu Consulting today is really Rapidime.
Okay. What was that process like to be getting acquired by Fujitsu?
So the owner of our company, Lou Wheeler, had owned the company for 38 years.
Wow.
So my job when he wanted to exit was to find the best buyer. We had Fujitsu, we had Keen and IBM essentially bidding for us, with eventually Fujitsu kind of outbid the other two, and ended up acquiring what was at that time the second largest privately held IT services company in the U.S.
So how does one put yourself on the market?
Well, at that size, it's incredibly important to be discreet about it, because if you're consultants, if you are clients here, that you are out in the market.
So you didn't put yourself on eBay or anything?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. So we went through the process. We had an investment banker who helped us also in the beginning stages, but after that, actually, the kind of process took over. We kept getting unsolicited inquiries from companies and interest, because I think among the senior management, the word kind of got out that Rapidime might be available.
Okay. So can you say how much it was sold for?
It was 200 million, and there was some parts around how much debt and assets they took over.
Okay.
But the stockholders got $200 million.
Oh, that's awesome. Not too shabby.
Yeah.
So then you and your other partner, after you sold it, started Sparta.
Yes.
And so was it pretty much the same business, same industry?
So Rapidime, when we sold, was of the 300 million, roughly 20% of the revenue came from SAP services. So I had a 1-year non-compete after Rapidime, and I had always a desire to stay an entrepreneur. So that was part of the deal, that I would have a short non-compete so that I could continue to be an entrepreneur. After a year, basically, we started Sparta Consulting, focused only on SAP. So it was a subset of what Rapidime did.
Right.
But Sparta did not do Oracle or PeopleSoft or Java-based work or custom-based work. It was only focused on SAP services.
Right. So basically, I'm guessing it was a lot easier that you weren't really starting from zero when you started Sparta. You had a client base you could call on, or.
So what's interesting is that's what most people expected, was that we were. Now Sparta's coming into existence. There will be all these client relationships that go through that. 2 years after Sparta was formed, we actually did a comparison, one of the Fujitsu executives and us, to see how many of our customers had anything to do with Rapidime or Fujitsu. And what was interesting is the number was less than 5%.
Really? So there's a whole new customer base.
So the customer base was completely new, though what was common, or what was something that we did find, is that when people at Rapidime heard that we were starting a new company, I thought we took very good care of people at Rapidime. So when they heard that we were starting a new company, we had an onslaught of people wanting to join us. So there were several people who were part of Rapidime who then became part of the Sparta team. So to say that we didn't borrow anything from Rapidime wouldn't be fair, because we did get a lot of the people, right?
So your staff, a lot of
A
staff.
lot of the management team
Okay.
came from the people that had worked and done well at Rapidime. They kind of wanted to be part of this.
Well, that says a lot about you, because the people, obviously they want to follow you because they enjoyed it and enjoyed working with you. So that says a lot
Thank
about
you.
you. So as I understand, Sparta, you really focus on selling to the enterprise. So, and I know that I've talked to a few entrepreneurs and myself too. What does it take to what's your suggestion in selling to the enterprise? What's the process of engagement? And
Well, I guess the one thing with the enterprise market space is the ability to deliver and create references. I think at one time Gartner called Rapidime the best kept secret. One of the articles said something like they're coming out of the protective program, where now you know about Rapidime and things like that. But how we got our business was through references. We did a great job delivering, and because we did a good job delivering, the client would refer us to the next one, and so on and so forth. We could at any given time. I remember one of the key things we used to use in our presentations is we used to say, this is our client list, and they said, well, give us 3 references, and we would say, well, pick any 3, right? And so, we had a very strong ability to deliver, and I think that's one of the key things when you're selling to the enterprise. The second thing that we found, which is is not as intuitive, but is that the people that sell the engagement should be the people that deliver it, right? So from a practice director standpoint, the person who sells the engagement, if you make that person also responsible for delivering the engagement, you invariably get better success because one, you don't overpromise, right? Because you got to deliver it next.
so are you saying that they're also the account manager?
Yes. So what
Okay.
we used to do with the practice director, the technical salesperson who used to go with our salesperson, knew that as they were scoping out the deal, they would also be responsible for delivering the deal, right?
Okay.
So the delivery manager would report up to the practice manager who sold the deal, and they were paid based on that, and and that really did make a difference. And there is this. The other thing I would say when you sell to enterprise is you want a team that doesn't. The sales team is not blaming the delivery team. The delivery team is not blaming the sales team. You don't want a situation within your team where people are not together. I'm always reminded of this quote I used to use about with Benjamin Franklin. He said, "We must all hang together, or we will certainly hang separately." Right? So I always used to remind my team about that. I was like, well, at the end of the day, if you're going to deliver successfully for enterprises, you got to have the ability to, stay together when things are not going exactly as planned, and come together with solutions for the customer.
Okay. So for your sales engagement, your project manager would also be part of the sales engagement. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's good. And what's the typical sales cycle like on the enterprise side? Like how long does it take to close a deal?
Yeah, so it depends on what kind of customer you're going at. An educated customer, the sales cycle is pretty low. And we used to have a lot of success with people that had already gone through an ERP engagement before, because then they would know how to read and see the fluff, right, in the sales pitch, and get quickly down to the core points. But with a new ERP customer, the sales cycle used to be long, and and we constantly had to encourage them to meet the team that's going to be on the project, talk to the references, client references. We would actually encourage the client to do that because we knew that's how we could distinguish ourselves.
What's the time frame?
For a new enterprise, I would say anywhere from 6 months to 9 months.
Right.
And for an experienced shop, it could be a 2-month to a 4-month process.
Okay, that's good to know. And then, let's see. So, how do you? This is the thing I personally struggle. What's the pricing? How did you figure out the pricing for the enterprise?
So we always targeted to be at the 75 percentile number, right? You didn't want to be the most expensive in the bid, but you didn't want to be the cheap player either, because people perceive sometimes the price kind of dictates the quality of the car. There's nothing to say that a Kia isn't as good as a Mercedes, but it's priced differently, right? So a lot of times people perceive the price to be what you're providing, and so we always tried to be at the 75 percentile number. Clients would tell us, well, I've got cheaper bids than you, and I would say I certainly hope so, right? Because that's what we're trying to be, right? So we're not trying to be the most expensive, but we always tried the 75%.
So you're just going out. You're getting like figures from your competitors or finding out through.
Yeah, when we used to lose deals, we used to always ask what the winning bid was and why they picked them. That was part of the process.
Okay, that's a good idea. That's good. And at some point, so I know that Sparta was sold. What was the exit strategy for Sparta?
So with Sparta, the formation itself was kind of unique. I had an opportunity at Rapidime, and Paul Fernberg, my partner, we both had opportunity to make good money at Rapidime. So when Sparta came around, money wasn't the biggest driver for us. So we actually had a very unique offer to our employees. We basically said that for the employees that join in the first year and a half, they could invest in the company at the same price that Paul and I invested at. And we had a goal that we needed to raise $7 million to do Sparta right. And basically, we said that if the employees decide not to invest $1, Paul and I will pick $3.5 million each. If the employees pick up $3 million, we'll split the other $4 million. So it was a very unique model, very amateurish way of doing it, but at the same time, it encouraged participation from our employees. And what's interesting is that we each ended up with only 20% of the company. 60% was picked by the employees. And I think that was a huge reason why Sparta was as successful as it was. So from an exit standpoint, to coming back to your question, so there was an exit planned in 5 years. And our thought process was we'll grow Sparta in 2 years. Once we get to 2 years, we will go out and raise our first external round of funding. In 2 years, we hit 25 million in revenue. The first year was 10 million in revenue. The second year was 25 million in revenue. We went out for external funding, and basically we got an offer which said, why don't we just buy you out? And our big objection was that, well, we intend to grow to 75 million in revenue in 3 years, right? And so how is the valuation going to work? So they did an earn-out deal where they said, we'll value you at 25 right now, and if you do hit 75 over 3 years, we'll pay you additional money through this time. And interestingly, for all the employees, when they had made the investment, we told them this was as risky an investment as they could make, right? This is not for everyone. But our goal was that if we were successful, we wanted to convert every dollar they invested to 5. And interestingly, this offer was, if we hit all our goals, we would have got $4.93 for every dollar that we invested. It was as close as 5 as it was going to get, and so we took the offer. And interestingly, we hit all the targets. So we did make $4.93 for every dollar that was invested by the employees, and made significant number of millionaires among the employee population.
So yeah, very happy employees.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, and so let's move on to Moneta. By the way, where did you get the name Moneta?
So my partner had picked the name Sparta, and Sparta did well, so we knew we wanted to stay with the Greco-Roman family of names. And Moneta is the goddess of money and memory. So we said, that kind of makes sense. And Douglas Bosley, our lawyer, he checked and he said, well, it's available if you want to take it. And we said, yep, let's go. So we ended up with Moneta Ventures as the name.
So tell me, so you just had your exit from Sparta. What was the inspiration to start up Moneta?
So, after I exited Sparta, people, the employees and others that had done well with us at Rapidime, then did well with us at Sparta, everybody wanted to know what I was going to do next. And I really didn't have any plans, right? So I wasn't sure what I was going to do next. So the thought process was, why not start a fund and people can invest in the fund? And that fund then becomes the basis to invest in other companies where we can take active part. So that's how the idea formed. We started with a goal of raising $10 million for the fund, three of which was going to come from my dad and I. And we ended up, because of the past success, I think we ended up getting a lot more employees, investing a lot more dollars and things like that. And we ended up actually raising $20 million. We don't have a single institutional investor.
Right.
And so it's a very unique fund in that sense. For a first-time fund and for a first-time manager, to essentially try to raise 10 and end up with 20, we feel very blessed from that perspective.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And we're so happy to have you in the Sacramento Valley. So, what made you choose to stay here in the Sacramento Valley?
Well, I know that in the past we have had large funds here in this area, but there was a period over the last few years where there really wasn't a fund actively funding, and I know that as Sparta, when we were trying to raise money, it was always having to talk to people in the Bay, and I knew there were other companies like ours here, which definitely were just as good as anywhere else in the country. So the thought process was, why not invest here? We love where we live, and the thought process was invest as much of the fund as we can here. We don't have any restriction in terms of where we invest, but I can tell you that of my 5 investments so far, 4 are right here.
We're like I said, we're happy. Up until I think you just started earlier this year, right?
Yes.
And almost I know a lot of entrepreneurs, and I pretty much have been telling them, if you're looking for money, go to the Bay Area. So it's nice to have you as a resource here.
Have you changed that? No.
Well, I've been sending people to you.
Yeah. Oh, good. So hopefully.
I sent a few people to you. And
Very
actually,
good.
for the record, 2 of our guests are part of your portfolio companies.
Absolutely, and that's we saw that, and we said, oh, since you are inviting a lot of our portfolio companies, you're picking the right kind of company. So our taste in that sense seems to be
Maybe
alike.
should be probably your analyst or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about before I talk about your portfolio, tell me about your what are you looking for in a company that you're investing in?
So I think we are looking for companies with a run rate of $500,000 in revenue to $5 million in revenue. So we typically will not fund just an idea or a team with just a prototype. We want revenue.
Right.
So this is not a seed fund in that sense. It's a early stage fund with $500,000 to $5 million in revenue. And the thought process there is that I have had the most fun and success in growing things from $500,000 to 30, 40 million, and I feel like that's a sweet spot. Once they get to be 100 million and so on, I feel it's I can't add any value to them, and 2, I feel I reach my level of incapability. I guess it just at that level it just I don't seem to provide as much value as I would like. So I said, why not just focus on things that I can I enjoy and I can help grow. So that's one requirement. The second is typically we want skin in the game from the entrepreneur. So the things that we usually reject would be situation where the entrepreneur says, well, I'm looking for funding, I'm looking for you to put all the money, I'm looking to now draw a salary which is pretty decently high, and the risk for them in that point is basically if that thing doesn't work, they're looking for another job. That just can't be the only downside for them, right? We want them to have skin in the game. We want them to be very much affected by the success or the failure of the enterprise. So that's the other thing we look for from entrepreneur. Right. And people with integrity, passion for their product. Those are some of the other ingredients.
And I think you're focused on more technology as opposed to bio or.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yes. Sorry. So from a sector standpoint, so from a geography standpoint, they could be anywhere in the U.S. or world. We prefer you to be in this region. And I would say that the bar that we set for companies here in this region is somewhat lower for somebody versus somebody, let's say, in the Bay Area or in Texas. And so we definitely encourage the region. From a sector standpoint, 80% of the fund will be in technology. That's the 80% of the fund, and 20% with healthcare related businesses.
Okay.
So that's how the fund allocation is set up.
And then, and I know that there's a few companies that I've sent you, and then there's a couple that actually met your criteria. So, and what's like a red flag, that like, oh, there's something wrong with this company, even though they might meet the criteria?
Well, I mean, the number of, it's like the Leo Tolstoy quote, which says, every happy family resembles one another,
right,
but every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way.
Mm-hmm.
So, with companies, that's the deal, right? Successful companies, they have they have all these ingredients together that are that make them successful. But at the same time, with companies that we don't invest in, there could be just a plethora of issues around, they don't have a sales engine, they don't have, enough skin in the game, they are not in an area that we feel will go places. So the rejection regions are a lot, right? It just really has to be, we look at roughly 15 to 20 companies right now. We would like our average to be 25 companies that we look at to one investment. Right now it's about 15 to 20 companies for one investment, right? So these companies have to be just right.
Right. Actually, since and I think we have you have 5 portfolio companies. Let's talk about who are you investing in right now, or who are the companies?
Yeah. So like I said, you have great choice in speakers. So Home Zada with John Bodrazic is a small investment for us. One of the larger investments is Fifth Planet Games with Rob Winkler.
Right.
We partnered with DCA Capital there. So our friends there, we partner and refer deals back and forth, and but we really feel very good about them.
Mm-hmm.
But they typically invest in companies that are 10 million and above in revenue.
Right.
It's a great mix and match. So that's the second one. There is a company called MindTickle, which Excel Partners invested in. Excel Partners, as you know, invested in Facebook and Dropbox and others. And this was a company where we actually convinced them to open their sales offices here in Folsom based on our investment. So this was a company based in the Bay that we brought here, with our investment. So that was the third one.
So, by the way, Lokesh is bringing out jobs here.
So it's interesting is I get more kudos for the 5 jobs we brought with MindTickle versus the 200 people we employed with Sparta here. Right. So, but no, absolutely. So I do think there is this rub around with the Bay, but no. So that was the third portfolio company, and the fourth one is business which helps chiropractic businesses scale.
Right.
So that's the healthcare part of the portfolio.
Okay.
And the fifth one, we just closed. We're not in a position to disclose yet for another.
We'll find out in the business journal. I'm sure.
Yes,
Kyle
within a week with Kyle.
So what advice do you have for people? Let's say they meet the criteria when they engage you. How should they prepare, or maybe just in general, how should they prepare when you're talking to a venture capitalist?
So one of the things, the process can be very slow, but not because we are slow. We can be slow too, but not because we are slow, but because the entrepreneur doesn't share all the facts in one go. Right? So we constantly get this, well, we'll give you a teaser, and it's like, well, there's only certain amount of time we can keep revisiting that deal, right? So the biggest word of advice I would give you is, give us all the information that you feel is relevant. Let us make that judgment, right? I mean, obviously you are restricted by not, you can't send us a 100-page document. You're restricted by size and so on and so forth. But if you can explain at least what your current financials are, what your projections are, what kind of terms are you looking for in the deal, what business you are in, what at least the basics of the plan. That really helps speed up the process. We are, the one issue that we have is we are first-time entrepreneurs. So my partner Denise Ferry, who's also in the audience, and we've been trying to figure out ways to make this process more efficient, because we are learning too as we go along. So one of the things we are encouraging people to do is talk to our investment analyst before we do a face-to-face meeting, right? So send a plan, talk to our investment analyst, who collects all the information, make sure that everything we need is there, and then we do a face-to-face meeting. That speeds up the process. Right. And the website is a great way to submit proposals. Let us know if there's references that you have. If Rich referred you, let us know on the website. We, look at every proposal that comes in through the website.
Hopefully they won't count against me.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the things I've seen here, that the problems that I see with some of the entrepreneurs here, is there's no seed funding. So what do you recommend for people who, and I've talked to probably a bunch of them that have an idea, and they're trying to figure out how to get funded. So what kind of suggestions do you have for them?
And that, is seriously a challenge, right? So because, our fund came in after an absence of 3-4 years with no active funds in the market space. We are seeing a lot of pipeline from companies that should have got funded a year ago and things like that. So we're seeing a lot of active pipeline right now, but we talk about this all the time, that at some point, do we then have to go and start providing the seed capital to some of these companies too? At this point, we have we have not down that path, but that is a challenge we have to overcome. There is SAC Angels in town, but we need more groups like that who can fund the seed capital. They provide the seed capital there. I know Sparta with the Venture Start program.
It's some crowdfunding, and I've been sending people to Bay Area. Actually.
Yeah, and unfortunately that's an issue that we have as a region right now.
Well, you're helping change the face on that.